The Big 12 Conference is on disaster watch this week. Things could go terribly wrong. And if you ask some creators in the Big 12 sphere, including those including those that I am very in tune with respect. Like I tune into John Kurtz all the time. I tune into 365. They have talked about how there were disasters in West Virginia losing to Penn State and Houston losing to UNLV. And the Big 12 wasn't exactly on its full display last weekend. Maybe that's the case. I thought it was a banner Saturday for the conference, despite that West Virginia loss. Look, it's a one outlier against a top 10 Penn State team. Did I think West Virginia was going to win that game? Yes. Did they look good in the loss? No. That's 1 out of 16 schools. Houston being another that lost its game. Texas Tech being another that got embarrassed but still won. I'm not worried about those when schools like BYU and Arizona State came and impressed, when Baylor put on a show that I'm not sure I was expecting, or Oklahoma State dominated in what could have been an upset, and TCU got a road win against an ACC school. Now, this week, truly disaster is afoot. Like if last week you thought that was disastrous or there was a kind of fall apart for the Big 12 in any capacity, sure, I wouldn't agree with that. This week could be really not good. Now, it works both ways. There are some coin flip games in here, but let's go through and give you the worst case scenario because, buddy, we're going to need some help. BYU loses at SMU. Would that shock you? No, shock? Of course not. SMU is a double-digit favorite. Oklahoma State, a single possession favorite, loses to an Arkansas team who has offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino and put up 70 points last week. That wouldn't shock you. Kansas State at Tulane. Now, K-State's a 10-point favorite. Will they win this game? Yes, I will bet. I will eat my left hamstring raw on this show. I'll become the poop cup guy. I'll eat my left hamstring raw on this show if Kansas State loses at Tulane with their first-year head coach. However, it wouldn't shock all of college football. They're only 10-point favorites. Pittsburgh beating Cincinnati. Yeah. Like, listen, the games that I've given you so far, BYU losing, Oklahoma State losing, Kansas State losing, Cincinnati losing to Pittsburgh, those are all so reasonable. They're not crazy. You wouldn't look at that and go, wow, that was an App State, Michigan level upset. That was an ACU, Texas Tech level upset. Iowa State losing to Iowa. That wouldn't be an upset at all. Iowa is favored in the game. Kansas losing at Illinois. KU's favored by 5, less than a touchdown in Champaign. Illinois is not bad. Brett Bielema. Colorado losing to Nebraska. That very likely happens in Lincoln. Houston losing to Oklahoma. That's already going to happen. And it still gets tougher. Texas Tech goes to Washington State. Washington State is favored by 2. And after the way Tech played last week, that could go wrong. And then Mississippi State, Arizona State in Tempe, while ASU's favored by a touchdown. Would you be surprised if the SEC school got the win there? There is a world, and I'm going to give you over the course of this week my predictions in these games. There is a world in which the Big 12 loses BYU, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Kansas, Colorado, that's 7 already, Houston is 8, Texas Tech 9, Arizona State 10. There is a world in which the Big 12 goes 6-10 this week. Now you've got Arizona playing Northern Arizona, TCU playing Long Island, West Virginia is playing a very good Albany team. Please, dear God, West Virginia win that game. However, the full scope of the conference, things could go really wrong. And after what I thought was a great week 1, I'm not positive that the poop cup will hit the fan in this week's games. But it's a possibility. And what I do like about this is the Big 12 has set itself up for some pretty good non-conference wins. Here's what I really don't like about it, though, and it's a point that I've seen made over the last couple of days by different media pundits, is the Big 12 hasn't gotten any attention. Like, I'm talking about it as the Locked On Big 12 host. And John Kurtz is talking about it as a guy who covers the Big 12 so close. And Heartland College Sports, they're talking about the Big 12. We all are. But nationally, we're not getting coverage. Why? We didn't have the standalone game. We didn't have this is like Colorado, North Dakota State. Yeah, but once that was over, it was great. Georgia's playing Clemson. Oh, awesome. Florida State's playing Boston College. There were these standalones, LSU and USC. We didn't have the cool marquee, wow, Kansas State is going to play, even give me like a Mississippi, like an Ole Miss in a neutral site. We didn't get national exposure from what the Big 12 did this first weekend. And while I'm over here screaming, look at us, look, we did so well, nobody else in the country is really behind that. How do you change that? Not with this week's slate. Because again, None of these games are the marquee, like everyone in the country is pointing and saying, oh, got to watch that one. Oh, neutral site top 25 game. Because if Oklahoma State beats Arkansas, everybody goes, yeah, Arkansas sucks. They're one of the worst SEC schools. If you lose to them, that's a problem. Same for Kansas State, Tulane. Same for Pitt and Cincinnati. If you lose these games, you're looked down upon heavily. If you win these games, if Iowa State beats Iowa, the country goes, cool. It was on CBS and Paramount Plus. We kind of watched it a little bit. Great. You won the game. If you lose, you're buried. If you win, you don't get that many brownie points nationally. So what the issue, the reason it's a disaster is you haven't set yourself, the way Penn State set itself up, you lost the way that West Virginia set itself up. You lost to Penn State. And it was Penn State. People were watching it. Big noon kickoff. That was the marquee game of the Big 12. You lost to a really good team. Nobody's blaming you for losing to a really good team. You could have looked better doing it, but yeah, okay, you weren't even the favorite. This week, we have a lot of close favorites that could lose games that the nation goes, Colorado really does suck. Or, oh, Kansas got beat by Illinois. They stink. Oh, Arizona State lost to Mississippi State. Of course, you're going to go 2-10, 3-9. Oh, BYU lost to SMU. Saw it coming. They're going to miss a bowl game. There's a lot to lose this week in Big 12 play, and really not a lot to gain if you look across the conference. However, I think what you can gain that will help my book, and maybe not the national media, is wins. I do think the Big 12 is in a good spot to get a lot of wins, even upset wins like BYU over SMU, something I predicted preseason, and especially after watching SMU fumble, stumble, throw up all over itself in week one. I believe at this point, BYU is in a perfect spot to beat a team that struggled with Nevada after BYU blew the brakes off of Southern Illinois. Coming up, thanks, BYU, on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you, folks, at home by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go. College football season is here, and FanDuel is where I go to say, hey, give me $10 on the BYU Cougars to upset the SMU Mustangs. And that is the least amount of money that I would put on that. I'm probably going to go way more in America's #1 sports book because I have so much confidence in some of these Big 12 games this weekend, including BYU. We have something different for you as well. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season out-of-market game on Sunday afternoons. And all you need is a Google account and the current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook today. With YouTube TV base plan, watch every regular season game now through September 22nd with a $5 bet. FanDuel.com right now. Visit it today. FanDuel, official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network.